Hey y'all, today we're going to be covering section 7.8, which is about noise pollution. Learning objective for today is that you can describe the human activities that result in noise pollution and its effects. You're going to learn about the negative implications of noise pollution, some of the sources, and especially looking at some of the impacts that it can have on animals. So, what is urban noise pollution? This is going to be any noise at great enough volumes to cause psychological stress, such as difficulty communicating, headaches, confusion, or hearing loss. And this is something that can happen in humans as well as animals. Some of these sources of this pollution. First of all, construction. Think of the loud jackhammers or trucks or pouring concrete. Transportation. You can have cars, buses, trains. They are honking, they are driving, they are skidding, crashing. There's just a lot of noises that can come from them. Industrial activity at our manufacturing plants, those are going to often be very loud. And then there's also domestic activity, such as if your neighbor is playing their music really loud, if people are mowing their lawns, if your neighbor is doing a home project and they're using a saw. I mean, I'm sure that you can kind of envision all sorts of different noises that you just hear walking around your area that are not on this list. This is kind of a good start. But basically, again, any noise that's going to be at like a loud enough volume where it could cause psychological stress. Maybe hearing your neighbor's music doesn't cause you psychological stress, but a bird could. So kind of think in those contexts when we're thinking about like psychological stress. So if we look at just like our typical street, all of these little vehicles have the opportunity to create noise that can cause stress on organisms. Like a lawnmower, when my neighbor decides to mow his lawn at 8 a.m. on a Saturday, I feel like it causes me psychological stress. So that is an example. And then these manufacturing facilities, there's a couple examples in this photo. This is going to be like a manufacturing plant, but also think of like trains. Trains are very noisy. So if you're right next to train tracks, you're probably aware of this noise pollution. But those are going to be a couple sources just in this one photo. Now, we're going to first look at the wildlife effects of land animals. Noise pollution can disrupt animal communication, migration, and it can damage their hearing. So an example of like a psychological stress, fun fact, caterpillars, their hearts beat faster when they're exposed to a simulated highway noise pollution, which could drive pollinator species decline. This is the result of the experiment where they kind of compared normal volumes to no noise. And you can see the blues, when there's highway noise, they are going to have higher heartbeats. When there's no noise, they're going to have lower heartbeats. Now, the problem is when you get hearing issues, this is going to prevent predators from hearing prey, and vice versa. Prey are not going to hear predators. It can also prevent mates from locating each other. This is going to decrease the chance of survival. Both of these things are. But especially like if you think of how many animals use sound to find their mates, it's going to be a problem if there's loud noises preventing that. So psychological stress, impacting like hunting and prey habits, and also just decreased mate. All of this is going to lead to decreased chances of survival for these organisms and their populations. Now we're going to look at aquatic wildlife. Aquatic noise pollution is going to come from the noises of ship engines, military sonar, seismic air blasts from oil and gas surveying ships. And so if you think of all of the ships that are out there and you think of all of the poor animals trying to live in there, there's like so much noise that can come from all around. And this is going to cause psychological stress. It can lead to hearing loss. It can disrupt communication. It can disrupt mating calls, predator and prey navigation, as I said on the last slide. It applies also to our aquatic organisms. But whales are especially prone to having migration routes disrupted because they use echolocation. And so, or many of them use echolocation. So if you're an organism that uses echolocation to find your prey, to communicate, to do like a lot of things, they're going to be very much impacted by these really noisy oceans around them. There are also seismic surveying ships, which send huge air blasts down into the water And what they're doing is they're searching for oil by recording how the echoes returned from the ocean floor. And these things were so loud that researchers off of the coast of Virginia can detect blasts that were happening in Brazil. So if you think of how loud that is being detected from Brazil all the way up to Virginia, think of the poor animals that are like there in the ocean right next to these sounds. And it's just going to totally rock their entire way of living. They aren't going to be able to hunt with echolocation. They aren't going to be able to communicate. They're going to be able to find mates. And so this is going to be catastrophic for them. This is going to be, sorry, forgot I had this diagram. A diagram of how this works. They basically use echolocation to bounce the noises off, but you have all these animals that are going to be impacted, and not even the ones that use echolocation. Think of like turtles. They don't use echolocation, but they have ears. And so when you're having that loud of a sound hitting you, it can damage your hearing ability. All right, so here's going to be our practice FRQ for 7.8. And what you're doing here is you're practicing the suggested skill of text analysis and describing the author's reasoning. So you are going to read this entire author's little excerpt that I took. I'm not going to read it out loud to you because I feel like that's a waste of both of our time. So read the passage. And then after you've read the passage, what I want you to do is describe the reasoning behind the author's claim that whales may be able to adapt to the increased levels of aquatic noise pollution. So that will be a practice FRQ for 7.8. Those are your notes on 7.8 about noise pollution.